in color. The continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Ryan O'Neal as Rodney Harrington, Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson, Tim O'Connor as Elliot Carson, Christopher Connolly as Norman Harrington, Patricia Morrow as Rita Harrington, James Douglas as Stephen Cord. Peyton Place is brought to you by
Elliot Carson has taken advantage of the long court recess to satisfy his curiosity about Jack Chandler. He has questioned Chandler's niece, Rachel Wells, and found her deliberately vague and evasive. But her attitude has only strengthened Elliot's determination to learn all he can about the man who seeks permanent custody of this frightened girl.
Well, everybody's here. Why don't you make your report?
Rachel, I'm very sorry I couldn't help you, Mrs. Carson. And you.
I thought you were going to take her to the hospital.
I did, but I was sent back. She had an appointment with a social worker.
Rachel? Rachel? Little misunderstanding.
About what? Rachel, I don't know what's wrong between you and my husband. You don't? No. I'm glad. And I'm sorry. About what? For acting like a child.
Listen, what happened? I asked her about Chandler.
Why?
Because he bothers me, and he bothers her, too.
But you already knew that, Elliot.
But we don't know why. What'd you find out? Nothing. She just gave me a few innocuous facts, that's all. And I guess I just pushed her too far, and she backed off.
Aren't you afraid you'll scare her away with all these questions?
Well, that might not be up to us.
Look, it's filling up in there. Excuse me.
All right, I'll join you in a minute.
Is there a chance that Chandler might retain custody of Rachel?
Sure, there's a good chance. I mean, on paper, he's a logical guardian. We're not going to be able to convince anybody otherwise unless we get Rachel's help. She did tell me a couple of interesting things, though. You know, her Aunt Lucy married a man she didn't know anything about. It was like he came out of nowhere with no belongings, no past. Just him and a marriage certificate.
That brings up a lot of questions, doesn't it? You think Rachel has the answers?
I don't know. But it goes beyond the beatings and the mistreatment. Something deep down. Maybe it started when she was a child.
The fact that that man might have come in contact with Allison gives me the creeps.
Well, but we don't know that she did, you know.
But we don't know that she didn't. Oh, Eli's waiting for me and the baby needs a feeding. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Excuse me. Listen, just what are you doing in here?
Well, Miss Franks was busy. She said she'd see me later.
Oh, so you just thought you'd come in and see a show or something?
Oh.
Excuse me.
But I wanted to be with you.
Well, listen, you just can't. Not now, not here and there. Now, you come with me.
But it's important to me.
Yes, it's important to me. That's why I don't want you to make a cheap sideshow out.
Oh, so you found her?
Yes.
That's not why I was
I thought one of your men was supposed to stay with her.
I wouldn't have bothered
We
you.
lost her.
Well, see if you can stay with her this time. Come over. Now, sit down.
I didn't mean to intrude.
Whether you meant to or not, you did, Rachel. Rachel, listen to me. This is something I have to keep private. Something very private and personal. I have to keep it separated from everyone else, including you. Now, will you just stay put?
Whoa, hey, watch that kind of stuff, Doctor. You're becoming a real fire hazard, aren't you? And I certainly wouldn't want to see you get burned.
He's the one, isn't he? The one that murdered Anne? Well, I hope they hurt him as much as he's hurt you.
Cord, you may proceed with your interrogation.
You saw Anne on the bluff?
Yes?
Did you speak with her?
Yes?
What was your purpose in coming to the bluff that afternoon, Mrs. Cord?
I had to see Anne again. I had to talk to her.
Why?
Because when she left the house, she was so upset. I was afraid she might do something foolish.
So the compassionate mother went after her, be by her side. Weren't you a little late?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Mr. Cord.
Where did you find Anne when you went to the bluff?
She was standing out near the edge, looking down at the sea. She seemed to be in sort of a trance. She kept moving closer and closer to the edge, and then some ground gave way under her feet, and I was afraid she was going to fall.
Or jump?
Yes.
Objection. Counselor's leading the witness.
Sustained.
What happened after you thought she was going to fall?
Well, I called out to her. It seemed to startle her. Oh, Stephen, I know what you're thinking, but she didn't fall then.
She didn't fall then? When did she fall?
She didn't fall at all, Stephen. She was pushed. He pushed her.
That's a lie. I didn't push anybody.
Sit down, Mr. Weber.
Lee Weber pushed Anne off the bluff. I saw him do it.
Mr. Cord? Mr. Cord, do you care to continue?
In view of this provocative testimony, Your Honor, I'd like to ask permission for a greater latitude in the phrasing of my question.
Your Honor, I'd like to point out that the court has bent over backwards to be lenient already.
I appreciate the understanding the court has shown so far, but I feel this witness has conveniently invented this last bit of testimony as an effort to conceal the truth about her daughter's death.
Mr. Cord, I'm going to grant your plea. But I have not forgotten it was necessary to find you in contempt once during these proceedings.
Yes, sir.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Honor. You said you saw Lee Weber push Ann Howard off the bluff.
I did, Stephen, I swear.
Oaths aren't necessary. You've already taken one. When did you see Lee push Ann?
After I'd finished talking with her, I started to leave. And then I heard the sound of his motorcycle coming.
How did you know it was Lee Weber's?
Well, I didn't until I saw him on it.
Where were you when you saw him approaching?
I was on the road a little way past the house.
Where was Ann?
She was still on the bluff.
And what did you do when you saw Mr. Weber approaching?
Well, I stepped off the road and hid behind some trees.
To your knowledge, did the defendant see you?
I don't think so. At least he kept right on coming.
What did you do?
I didn't know what to do. I was frightened.
Frightened of what?
The sound of that motorcycle bearing down on me on that lonely road. The look on his face. I just waited until I heard the motor stop. And then I started back toward the house. I started running, and then I saw them. They were out near the bluff. He was moving toward her, making wild, threatening gestures, and she was moving away from him, pleading with him. But he kept coming, and he forced her nearer and nearer the edge, and then he pushed her. There was a scream. She was gone.
It's all very interesting, Mrs. Cord. You say Lee Weber stalked Ann Howard, that he was making wild and threatening gestures? And she was backing up and pleading? What were you doing all this time, Mrs. Cord?
Oh, Stephen, I was paralyzed. I wanted to move, and I couldn't. I just stood and watched.
You just watched? Well, that's very odd. You testified that you came back to see Ann a second time because you were afraid for her safety. And now you tell me you just watched as your own daughter was pushed off the cliff?
It's true.
Well, that's very interesting and very reminiscent. The defendant's brother, Christopher Weber, testified that he was in the vicinity of the bluff also. And he said that he just stood by and listened. Very interesting, especially since his testimony was run on the front page of the Clarion. Now, it doesn't take much to change the verb from I heard to I saw, does it? Did you read Christopher Weber's testimony on the front page of the Clarion?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, there's some other things I'd like to know. Like what the concerned mother did after her daughter fell over 100 feet to her death. Did you run to the base of the cliff and see if there was still some life left in her? Did you take your daughter in your arms and weep over her? Did you inform anyone what you had witnessed? Did you make any immediate effort to see that this man that you now accuse of murder was brought to justice for what you say you saw him do?
No.
Why didn't you come forward then? Why now?
I don't know. I don't know.
You're lying, aren't you?
No.
Your whole life has been a lie.
No, no.
That will be all. I cannot allow this to continue. The attorney for the defense has just demeaned not only the witness, but the very existence of the Peyton family. Your Honor.
Mr. Peyton, you will take your seat.
There is no law, no due process of law that permits character assassination in the guise of interrogation. The name of this county is Peyton. The name of this town is Peyton. The name of the mill that supports this town is Peyton. This is a Peyton world.
Mr. Peyton.
I have been patient, remarkably patient, but I could not hold my tongue.
Bailiff, will you escort Mr. Peyton out of the courtroom, please?
Mr. Payne.
I realize that I'm out of order, Your Honor, but Mrs. Cord and I have been together many, many years. She is an old and trusted employee. She is an old and trusted friend.
Bailiff, you may step aside.